And just into the Situation Room, new questions about security and the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, which killed 4 Americans, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. We're now learning that the villa, the building that was burned and sacked in the hours-long assault, did not meet standard U.S. security requirements for a United States consulate. CNN's intelligence correspondent Suzanne Kelly has been working this story for us. Suzanne, what are you picking up?
Right, Wolf. Well, we are learning that that mission in Benghazi was operating under a security waiver at the time, and that is it basically means that the typical security standards that would have been required at other diplomatic missions did not apply in this particular volatile area, mainly because the villa, which was being used to carry out the U.S. mission there, was temporary in nature. Now, according to diplomatic security experts, that decision to allow the mission to operate under a waiver would have been made in consultation with someone in Washington, along with their Libyan counterpart and, of course, the ambassador himself. Take a listen.
Someone made the decision that the mission in Benghazi was so critical that they waived the standard security requirements, which presents unique challenges to the diplomatic security service, as you can imagine.
Now, if you think about those unique challenges from a security perspective, a typical security standard would include things like barriers surrounding the facility, a safe room, and there would have been multiple layers of armed security, Wolf.
So what kind of security did it have?
Well, we know that there were 3 armed Americans who were assigned to that embassy full-time to protect that location, as well as 2 Americans who were traveling with Ambassador Stevens. There were also 4 Libyans armed who were assigned to protecting that facility full-time. Now, it can take years for a U.S. embassy to meet the pretty stringent security standards that are required. And as we know, this mission hadn't been operating that long, Wolf.
But this wasn't an embassy. This was a consulate. Are the same requirements out there for a consulate and an embassy? Because the embassy is in Tripoli. This was the consulate in Benghazi.
Not if it is a temporary location, which is one of the things that they pointed to. Another point of this, Wolf, is looking at the timeline of this attack and what had happened. And, you know, we've been working very hard over the past couple of weeks to put that together. I spoke a little bit earlier with an American who was in Benghazi. He spoke directly to Ambassador Stevens. By his account, it would have been about 45 minutes before this attack took place. Some interesting clues here. He said the ambassador sounded upbeat and calm, was very enthusiastic about the next day's meeting. About 20 minutes after that, the source spoke with a security officer, and that's when he realized something was going on. Now, the officer told him, "We've got a real problem here," hung up to go and deal with it. It was about 20 minutes after that, he says, when he started hearing RPG fire from about 1.5 miles away from that U.S. mission location, Wolf, where we now know the ambassador died. Yeah,
sad story indeed. All right, thanks very much, Suzanne Kelly. For that, let's dig a little bit deeper with our national security contributor, Fran Townsend. She's a member of the CIA External Advisory Committee. Last month, Fran visited Libya with her employer, McAndrews and Forbes. Fran, what do you make about this waiver for less security at this consulate in Benghazi? Is this a common practice? Does this change something in the overall Libya investigation?
Wolf, I don't think it really changes anything. I mean, certainly as part of the investigation now, we'll want to understand who made the recommendation. It would have gone, the regional security officer would have been involved in what were the mitigation measures. If it couldn't meet the full standards, what were the requirements and how would they be met? For how long did they plan to operate under the waiver? And, of course, the ambassador would have had to sign off on that request for the waiver that went to Washington. And so I think this turns out to be just part of what will be this ongoing investigation. You
saw, I assume, the New York Times front page story today that U.S. intelligence in Benghazi suffered a huge blow because immediately after the death of the ambassador and the 3 other Americans, basically U.S. intelligence operatives pulled out of that area. The New York Times quoting one U.S. intelligence official as saying, "We got our eyes poked out." Here's the question. How concerning is this that U.S. intelligence may be blind in Benghazi right now?
Well, you know, just because, you know, there's many places, many dangerous places around the world that U.S. intelligence can't be present and works with the local service. Here's the particular problem in Libya. Of course, with the new government being established, the security service, the intelligence services there are themselves trying to stand up. And so I think it's sort of a double hit. Not only do you not have U.S. intelligence officials still in Benghazi, but you've got a nascent intelligence service in this new government. And so you don't really have a fully productive partner. I think those two things together do make it very challenging. But we ought to be clear. There'll continue to be networks of informants. There'll be all sorts of surveillance, whether that's technical, signals intelligence. And so they will continue to collect against the intelligence requirements. They're going to be certainly more challenged.